Get centered, present. We've been spoiled. We're used to having our beautiful Native American music and singing for us, but hopefully Greg and Pam are watching. We miss you guys. So we'll just have to do our silent inspiration, expiration. Just get present in our breath. That's what it's all about. Just exist in the only place you can exist in, right here, right now. Everyone just get in touch, check in. Check out of all the places that you can't be. Check into the only one you can. As you breathe in and breathe out. It's a great visualization. Just visualize a bunch of windows, programs open on your computer monitor. Every thought you see that isn't based in right here, right now, just see the little X box come up on it. Just close it. We all have a lot of thoughts running on our desktop. Let's just close them down. Open up capacity for this moment. Deep expiration. Pause in the expiration. And inspiration. Deep into the expiration. And into the inspiration. And this time, let's go into that expiration. Hold it. Inspiration. And expiration. And inspiration. Deep into the expiration. Pause and then enjoy the absence of breath. And inspiration. love all around you. See people you have something in common with. So this is quite a crowd here, isn't it, for the last couple weeks? I feel like, where did all these people come from? All these new faces. We were kind of down to the distillate for a while there, you know? The ebb and flow. I continue to get, from people that I have visits with, I continue to get comments of, really enjoy watching it, please keep having the shows when you can, really get a lot out of it, look forward to it. So, you know, there does and continue to be a lot of people who really check in, who just can't get here or miss it from time to time. So, just for all of us who continue to show up and create the chemistry for the show in the present, it is appreciated, so I want to share that because people do share it with me.
Keith, can you speak up just a little bit?
Sure. Was that my cue, Sarah? So whenever you talk as a part of the show, just talk louder because people that are watching it, they've been telling us that they can't always hear it as much. So make sure you project your voice as loud as I tend to keep mine, because my voice is pretty much able to be heard, but we want everyone else's to be heard just as much. So you're going to speak up. All right. Let's go ahead and begin into our review. Boy, with this time change, it feels like we're having this class at like 10 o'clock at night.
Exactly. We'll go for breakfast after.
Study guide from the last class, 11.1. The illusion of control is the soil which the seed of worry and concern is planted. Without the illusion of control, there's no basis for worry and concern to grow. But that soil you create with the worry and nervousness is all based on the illusion that you have control over far more than you have control over. Focus points began to talk about what you are and help you all begin to let go of being a who and more embrace the what that you are, the energy, the substance, the matter, the what that you are, which is far more in control than the who that you are. The more we can be in the stillness, the more we're able to let who we are die and become what we are. In this way, we open ourselves to becoming a clearer channel for God. Again, for those who are just watching, maybe for the first time, we tend to define God as the force and source of all creation. That allows that force and source of creation to work through us to become us. Magnificent is what we realize we are in an egoless sense, when we have allowed the true nature of that force and source to live within us, or when we recognize and accept we are created life forms, the manifesting energy of God in a form of life. So if we can continue to let go of the illusion of control of events and simply focus on the only thing you really have control over, how you are with what is in this moment, you can eliminate that soil, and when you do so, you can eliminate the possibility of worry and nervousness and over-concern to grow. As always, remember a healing for one of us is a healing for all of us. From this understanding we share with each other with an intention of healing and balance, of acceptance, compassion, and love. Reflection questions. How can I allow and embrace my own inevitable who death so I can transcend into what? Okay? What is it? How is everybody that was either watching the last class or was at the last class? How did you find yourself, for lack of better words, trying to deal with or integrate that awareness of being a what over a who? How did you find that affecting, your day-to-day existence? Anybody? Got a lot of takers tonight. Okay.
I didn't find it came naturally, but it was very helpful. When I would get upset about something, I would be saying to myself, I have to say it. I can't be it yet. I have to say it, but I am the what, I'm not the who. And that helped me remove myself from whatever situation was upsetting me. But it was more a conscious mantra than it was just being.
Right. And it's what Kat brings up is a a great point that we can never talk about it enough. You know, we don't have to talk about it in length, but that is a step in practicing anything. That it is a conscious mantra, it is a conscious practice, and that over time, that which you are making conscious will become unconscious, and it'll become completely natural. So that's just you can never hear that enough as you begin something. That you have to consciously practice it until it becomes an unconscious habit. And then it becomes natural in all the ways. Anything you practice, instrument singing, anything you practice, but living life, of course, is what we're talking about. So, perfect. That's exactly what I would have expected someone to say. So that's great. Why do I have reluctance to embrace my magnificent nature? What fears, hidden unconscious or overt conscious, actual imprison me in suffering due to the fruitless wants and desires of being who? Okay, so it's a very, very elegant sentence of saying, why do I resist being the magnificent what, and somehow default back into being the who? Okay, so what does someone think about that? Why would you want to be a who, okay, and what we know a who to be, okay, a person, an individual? Why would someone want to be that instead of being the magnificence of everything manifesting?
Is it really a case of wanting to be, or is that what we have been brought up to be?
Well, it's not so much that it's a choice, okay? It's why would someone continue to be in that? Knowing what they know, why would they want to still go back to that? Why would they still default
Okay, so
back?
we're saying they know.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because not everybody knows.
Right, but
Okay.
those of us who were in the class last
Oh,
week,
okay,
you know,
okay.
it's
It's a cheat sheet for you.
That's what we're talking about.
I'm just getting a little bit philosophical.
That's
here.
You're good.
It's for the 11 o'clock show.
The late show.
I don't so much have an answer, but a few weeks ago, or whenever you had talked about wanting to talk more about the resistance to healing and the resistance to wellness, and that seems to be what this question reflects. And I'm very interested in that, because there's parts that are in that category.
Right.
And so, but I do think that there's the fear, well, it's all that fear of the unknown, and I just think it's a fear of not, of being more isolated than, it's a fear of isolation, or fear of doing something wrong, or whatever somebody's fear from maybe childhood is about what they weren't or what were not, and always wanting to try to do better and be better and all of that, and
Okay.
just not measuring up.
Right.
And so I'm really curious about that.
Okay.
The resistance to healing when we all have that capacity.
Right. Okay. So those are great questions. And so what you want to try and unwrap your brain around, okay? Don't try and wrap your brain around this. Try and unwrap your brain around this, okay? Is that the nature of intelligence is it wants to frame something. It wants to put parameters on something. It wants to define things, okay? Intelligence by nature defines itself by understanding. Okay, so spirituality is not based on intelligence. Spirituality doesn't need, the spirit, we'll call it spirituality, the spiritual nature, okay, of things doesn't need to define itself. It doesn't need to be defined. It doesn't need to be in a known category. Intelligence needs to define itself, because intelligence needs to know that it's right, or that it's doing something right, or that it's moving in some type of, in its frame network, okay, rational, logical direction. Spiritual nature, spiritual nature in us is not concerned with such things. It's observing the proof. It's not trying to arrive at the proof. It's observing what is. It's not trying to arrive at it. So to answer your question, which you actually brought into your question, is really it's letting go of intelligence. It's letting go of the known.
Exactly.
Yeah, It's letting go of the known. It's not so much letting go of the fear of the unknown. It's letting go of what you have known to be and embracing a level of experience that is unknown. And even when it becomes known to you, it is a transient known. It is known in this moment with the awareness that in the next moment it could be known as something completely different. That is, that's living in a reality that isn't needing to be framed. It doesn't need to be framed. Now, the whole nature of civilization is that we believe we need to have, we've developed as a civilization, as a species, we've developed all kinds of rules and regulations on how we should live together. All these things, again, were based on control. That if we weren't following laws and rules, that we would be out of control. Okay, and to some extent, the proof isn't all in on that. Okay, how successful we are as a civilization, as a species, is really yet to be determined. If you look at all the rules and regulations that we live by, and remember that every day there are more rules and regulations being inflicted upon us. Okay, there's not less rules and regulations. There's constantly more rules and regulations being put upon us. How is the life form of humanity in general acting towards those rules? How is it doing in those rules? Is it feeling more liberated? Is it feeling more connected? Is it feeling more at peace? It may be getting along to some extent, like better with each other, but how is it really getting along with its experience? How is it really getting along with what its real purpose is? It isn't. So this very long path that Western civilization has been on, okay, that really developed out of, we're just going to use some somewhat endpoints. It developed out of Greece. It developed out of this Western civilization. Okay, it really hasn't proven itself to be right. It's led to a lot of it's led to a lot of thinking. It's led to a lot of obligation to keep thinking a certain way because we've been thinking a certain way.
And wants and desires.
Yeah, wants and desires. It continually needs to be proving itself. By doing. Okay, so it needs to be looked at. So when we start practicing living, and like I always tell everybody this, I call it the practice, but it's this way of living more spiritual, more intuitive, embracing the unknown, living in the I don't know, giving life the freedom to show you how it is instead of trying to tell life how it is, looking for the truth in nature.
The way I heard it is, it's about being versus doing.
Right. Yeah. It's about just being present. It's a different way. Okay. And it in many ways it comes into opposition. And I'm not talking about just externally. It comes into opposition internally between what you've been told. This is to your point again. What you've been told you have to act like to not feel isolation. Literally is what causes the real isolation. Because real isolation is the feeling you have when you feel disconnected from source, from oneness. That's real isolation. So we give up feeling, we give up having that sense of connection and feeling real isolation in a desperate attempt to not feel isolated from other people that are only going to die or leave. We give up eternity, immortality, for temporality. It makes no sense. Why are we giving up a constant for a variable? Okay? Because in the moment we don't want to feel isolated. Because in the moment we don't want to deal with the fact that we don't know what's going on. But once you get comfortable with not knowing what's going on, once you get comfortable with the transient nature of human experience in human society and your experience within human civilization, it's quite refreshing. It's very liberating. But, to your point, you have to experience letting go of the one, not letting it be why you're here, embracing the other, which is what you're here being. And then you interface with all the rest of humanity that still sees itself as, you know, a big deal. And you can have a real relationship with it. Make sense? There's no real easy way to talk about it.
I think I left something on the stove. I have to be
Oh, yeah.
pretty sure I did.
You know, Keith, I talk about control a lot.
Kat, speak up a little, please. I'm sorry.
I talk a lot about control in this class, and it just occurred to me, and I don't want to believe that this is true, but what I heard was, I'd rather be miserable in what I know than trust what I don't know.
That's it.
Because I know that it might make me miserable, but at least I know the parameters.
That's right.
And there's so much better on the other way, but letting go of that whole illusion that this is what is, even though it sometimes makes me miserable, it seems much safer to me than the other.
Yeah, and that's where, when you allow yourself, and that's the biggest point that I make with people when I see them and I work with them, you know, that you can't deny a healing. You can't deny something feeling different, feeling better. You can't deny it. It's an experience. You can't say this was there and now it's not. That didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So to your point, Sarah, that's why people resist allowing that healing to happen, because once they do, then what they've allowed to happen, okay, which was something they can't understand, couldn't quite wrap their head around, in fact had to unwrap their head around something for it to happen, everything has to change. So it's almost, as you said, Kat, it's almost easier to not be healed and stay in control and stay in the known than it is to be healed and have everything have to completely change.
I didn't know I felt that way.
Yeah.
It just kind of.
But it's just, and again, you know, Kat's a great example. If you look at all the new things you've let into your life over the last 6 months, all the things that weren't in your known, that are now in your known, and all the healing that's happened because you've entered into that unknown space, it's clear that you're going in the right direction.
I feel like I'm doing the 1 step forward, 2 step backward cha-cha.
Probably more like 2 forward, 1 back, you know.
Well, I hope.
Yeah, no, you are, or you wouldn't even be talking in class.
That's true.
So that's, so, you know, so did I take time to sit in the stillness with the what that I am? If so, what did I experience? If not, what got in my way? So did anyone take time to do that? Did anyone take a time to just sit there and let it dissipate? I want to ask the people here. I want to start with you, Sarah, then I'll ask. We got good people over there. Oh, go ahead. We got time.
It's a little bit related to what we were just saying,
Right.
but it fits here too. So it occurs to me that a who has limits and classifications and borders and boundaries and walls, excuse the word,
Oh, great.
and that what is limitless
Right.
and all potential. And so last week I lost it a little bit, to be honest, you know, in terms of the political scene. And I was going down the who path, like, oh, I'm gonna be an activist, I'm gonna organize, I'm gonna do all this stuff, which I may still do. But I also thought, wait a minute, we have to start listening to each other. And we are all the same, we're all human. We all really want the same things. And so I meditated into the whatness, into the collective, to see if I could gain some wisdom, you know, so I got inspired by the limitlessness
Awesome.
of the what.
Good. Andy.
I gotta tell you, I watched last class, and I was lost. I'm watching and I didn't understand it. I mean, I knew what you were saying, but it wasn't in here. And it hit me today as I was going over the study guide before I came in. I was sitting outside in my chair and looking at the woods and doing my thing. And I realized that our last session, we worked on letting go of more of the who. Well, many of you know I've been out of work for a while. I came home from that session and there was an email from a company that was interested in me. And anyway, a long process later, cool, you know, I ended up getting a job.
Congratulations.
Finally.
Yeah.
But it wasn't till today that I realized, obviously it's what I can do, that the reason they hired me, but the company's going in a new direction. And so I got to thinking about it. It's more like what I am, not who I am, but what I am, because they're tired of the same old, so they're trying to bring in people with a different view or a different way of thinking, and that must have come across in my interviews. And it hit me today that they hired me for what, not who, even though, you know, I have to meet certain criteria and stuff like that. But, so.
Isn't that awesome?
But it all clicked because I was so lost on the last class. I
It was a big,
You know,
class.
we were here and we were lost.
Yeah.
Well, you know, there's been
Yeah.
a lot of issues and a lot of who stuff in my past that has been really hard to let go of.
You know what, Andy?
So
Your
finally.
what shines more every week.
Oh, thank you.
There's a glow of what around you. It's like an aura, and it just is growing and growing. I've seen it since I've been here.
Oh, thank you. It finally dawned on me at least a little bit of what you meant
Awesome.
last class.
Yeah, we've had a couple great experiences together where we've been clearing out what was blocking that what from really manifesting, and it's really neat that that sequence of events happened that way. So it was, again, undeniable.
Right. And that was the miracle. I came home from that session and that's where it started.
Isn't that awesome?
So the air was cleared, so to speak. Some more of that who was gone.
Yeah. Mary Lou?
Of course, I always love going to the lake. That's just a special place for me, but to take the what to a next level, I work with 3 grades of children, 3rd, 4th, and 5th, and so 3rd grade has 2 opportunities for a state reading test. It's a state guarantee for Ohio. So all last week was state testing in our district, and we went online for the first time, so we probably had children prior to this. And of course, they're very worried and anxious because of what it's all about. And of course, many of you know my thoughts on the testing. I burp it into a word bowl and it remains because it doesn't look like the value and the worth of the child. It's not about the soul. So to prepare, we had stillness in the class. I play a lot of classical music with my kids. I do a lot of breathing with my kids. And so the week prior to the testing, because I didn't have classes because I was testing all week, we did a lot of stillness and just with breathing calmly and reconfirming how beautiful all the what's are in my rooms, and calming them down and erasing the fears, and it was wonderful. And then during the testing, I had a couple children that were very emotional. They were having problems. Again, just talking calmly and just confirming that they're wonderful and what they were doing, and it'll be okay. But that stillness with the kids, I wish we could do more things like that worldwide, you know, with breathing and just confirming how beautiful the what's they are, you know. So it's just a beautiful continuation of stillness prior to having to go through that.
Lays the foundation. Lays the foundation. Anybody else? Anybody else? You? You? You get a little bashful sometimes, so I want to, pull you out.
Tongue in cheek, as it's been said. The last 2 weeks have been hellacious, okay? And I'm at that point where I'm part of the whole flow. You know that and everything else, but it's amazing it doesn't stop. So if you feel that you've hit a great aha moment, it's going to continue. And there were some major upheavals, which, and they didn't really have to do with the election, even though I swore I was not going to watch it, okay? But I was up until midnight that night. But there have been some major things, which I won't go into the details, because I wonder at the universe, like, you put all that into place so I could learn this. And we went through that on Saturday morning, where something that I had put in place already in my life, not as a who, but as a what, where I'm going and where I'm moving, was totally, I had the option. You always have choices. I had the option to say, because of this and this, I can't do this. And it was perfectly okay. I went on my way and said, okay, I had to laugh at it. So it's a case of, much like Andy, when you got it, there's always those got it moments. But I think the biggest thing for me, as far as being a who or a what, is being out in nature with the grandbabies. And how a 29-month-old can be the biggest teacher about you're not a who. I have an identity with him, but he doesn't care. He's on his own little path. And it's, leaves and acorns and pine cones and all of that stuff that if anybody ever has that opportunity, go out there with a grandchild. Because once they start realizing they don't care that they're a who, there's a what that they want to do. And that's run and be wild and be free. And they're part of it all. They're part of the leaves, they're part of the wind, they're part of everything. So
That's a great segue. I'd like to use that if I could, because it was perfect. When did we can talk about it just in this life, and it's a rhetorical question, When did you let go of your sense of adventure and discovery? When did life stop becoming something that you felt the freedom
when people
to discover?
Squash you down, okay?
When your parents start saying, don't do that, you're gonna get hurt. And don't do that because that's not socially acceptable. And we have to behave this way. And that starts very young, when we take that spirit that came with the body of the child and start just pounding it because of our fears. And we say, no, you shouldn't do that, no, you shouldn't do that. And so it becomes, my who, because that's what I have to protect.
I
think
feel
that's when it happened.
I feel like with parenting, a lot of it's been so authoritative and disciplinary. It's not providing, like, this is how to live healthy, this is how to be happy, this is how to really let life teach you. It's been more punitive because of the safety of the child, mostly from the parents. So, I mean, a lot of it is necessary to have those restraints just in terms of them developing. For me personally, I became too much energy all the time, and it was not healthy. So I was way too adventurous, not taking too many risks, not being compliant with authority. So I was kind of on the converse. I was gonna defy everyone to show you can't tame me, and that's just as negative as the other ones, because eventually they both collapse until balance comes back into play. So I think just a lot of times with parents, my God, I'm not a parent, and that would be hard. So it's kind of learning how to parent lovingly versus, tell someone what they should expect life to be by placing limits upon that child.
It's, the way that I approached, the way I approached teaching and the way I approached parenting, which I saw as nothing more than an opportunity to teach. I think if you look at every opportunity with another person that's looking to you as an opportunity to teach, you teach your children about safety. You teach them what it is to be safe and unsafe. Once you've taught a child what it is to be safe and unsafe, that's about it. To go beyond, see what we do is we try to go beyond teaching a concept into controlling an outcome.
Mm-hmm.
you know, a good teacher teaches a concept and then teaches application of that concept, and then realizes it's up to the student to apply that concept. A person who's trying to be too much of an authority is hooked into control. Okay, they're trying to teach a concept and then inflict that concept to control an outcome or to avoid an outcome that they don't want to experience as someone who has a relationship with that person. And that's where, you know, that's where you have to watch what it is to be a teacher or be a parent. You know, you're here to teach. Now, of course, in addition to teaching the concept, what's even more powerful is if you're an example of the concept you're teaching.
And where that gets really complicated, and before long everybody's going to know all about Liam, but Liam is a very sensitive, very bright young man, okay? And I really think there's more to it. You probably were raised by a parent who allowed you a certain amount of independence. Well, you may not look at it that, but that's, you know, but I can look at my son who is now a recently graduated millennial, okay? He's moved on. And he was raised in a single parent family home without the presence of a father. And now he's the authoritarian father with a child who is not taking well to that, but total respect, okay? But, and I'm going to say this, and it sounds almost, I don't know what, but that's where grandparents, and I mean I'm seeing, because I'm in a totally different place than when I raised my son. And my being with him, I am the what? I am the balance. Because I am not my daughter-in-law, I'm not my son, but I can go in and I can say to my son, you know, you crushed that little boy's heart just by saying one word. And so it's a balance, and he's starting to pay attention to it. Because, yes, free energy and free spirits, that's how I raised my kids. And now they're almost going the opposite extreme. So it's all of that. Now we've got the child who is not afraid of anything. He thinks he is immortal, he can fly, he can do anything. And you ask him and he'll tell you that, okay? But the thing is that he has that spirit, like you have that spirit. And somehow there comes a point where you realize you need to do something to find that middle ground in order to find you. Because, and I don't know if, but I think when you have the rebellion, and you didn't use that word, and I didn't know you growing up, but from what you just said, when you have that rebellion, sooner or later you have to find yourself again. And that may not have been you, that was the facade you put on because of the situation you were in. Whether that was too liberal, whatever, as ever. And you go back and you have children your age now, and you see where, geez, I could have done something differently. But I wasn't different then, and it's different now. But so now it's the balancing point. You have a grandson. You're the balancing point for that younger generation. And they don't fight it because there's still the respect for you as a parent. So you have that ability to raise the child who is part of nature, is part of, and not lose himself to all the expectations that everybody has.
I think another thing we do is, and I'll just use my experience real quickly, and I'm not saying I was right, but when my son was born, I was in a place of, I went to Unity Church a lot, and I was in a place of there's all sorts of possibilities out there. And so when he was about 3, he said, Mom, when I used to be a pirate, and instead of saying, oh yeah, great imagination, I gave him a listen. And I listened and acknowledged it. And then one day he told me he was seeing lights around people. And instead of feeling like, okay, that's a kid with a great imagination, I allowed him to have that sense of his spirit. And the last time that I'll talk about is he was saying, I was playing with these girls and Mom, I was so bored. So I left the room and I went flying up there. And I said, okay, well just remember there's a golden cord. and tug on it if you need to get back, because I knew he was tripping out of his body. He was so in touch with spirit, he was so in touch with the what, that interfacing between the what and the who, if I had been the kind of parent who said, oh my God, you just, yeah, right, and not listened, he wouldn't have been able to develop that what that he had. That's, and I was lucky because that's the frame of mind I was in at the moment.
Mm-hmm. All these great inputs on how things can be done. This is why, it's still, it still is a goal and a purpose, and I continue to move forward on. This is why we need the library of experience. This is why I move forward with that nonprofit. This is why I continue to work towards developing a database where these experiences can be shared. Because what is the parent do that's raising a child that doesn't have their parents? Wouldn't it be nice for them to be able to go on the library of experience and listen to Jan say, this is what I did, or listen to Kat say, this is what I did? There's been this loss of generational knowledge.
Exactly.
And it's happened, we've seen it happen on a microcosmic level in indigenous populations, okay? But what we fail to see is that it's not something that's happening to them on a small scale in an isolated way. It's happening to humanity on a large scale, but because they're in a small population, we can see it. We can see it because it's so different. But it's really the same thing that's happened to our species. And that's why I'm continuing to be passionate about developing a library of experience, so that everybody has 1 million grandparents in the world that they can hear information from. That literally the most important thing that is being lost is the wisdom of these experiences that were just shared, which may seem ordinary to some people, even though I think they're extraordinary, okay? They are extraordinary. They're so simple, okay? But yet, if I were to ask you, how much of an effect do you believe that had on your son being a happy, prosperous person in his life today?
Oh, a great deal.
A great deal. How much would you say that effect had on your son being able to find himself in whatever way he finds himself?
Both of my sons, and they're very different. And it's very different when one of my sons is adopted and he has no legacy of his own. There's a total disconnect, and that leaves him really at risk, and we went through a lot of that. But today, he's an adult that can face just about anything, and he's become more patterned after my behavior than my younger son. And it's interesting. The younger son has incorporated my values, but he's also incorporated the values of his father, which are being displayed at times with his child. So the effect, every parent and every person they come into contact with at any length or any depth leaves their imprint. And so that imprint basically goes with them, and it's how they learn to cope with it. And I was the balancing piece because the dad wasn't there, but the dad's there big time now. But the bottom line is they carry on with respect, etc., not only toward their father, but towards all people, a sense of righteousness, a sense of independence, and the ability to basically be their own people. They are not looking for that connectedness outside. That at times society does look at it as, you guys are just way too independent, you know?
Right. Now what if, for the sake of conversation, before you began parenting a child, okay? Before you began parenting a child, you could read the wisdom of 10,000 grandparents. What if you weren't limited to the impact of 2 primary people in your life? What if you could dilute, for better or worse, which I think it would be for the better, the impact of a parental effect in your life by having access to reading other parents' opinions on how they raise their children and the outcomes. Think about the profound effect that would have on a child, for better or worse, okay? But obviously the library of experience isn't going to include parental advice that's destructive, you know, it's going to, but let's say a child's growing up and let's say his parents are alcoholics, okay? And they're telling him that he's worthless and he's no good and he's, okay, and they're displaying those types of parenting behaviors, which are typical when someone has problems, okay? What if they were able to read and watch 1,000 other parents say, this is how I raised my children, this is what helped them be successful, this is what helped their spirits be free, this is what helped them, and they were then able to compare that with their experience and finally know that what was happening to them wasn't correct.
It's the same thing that happens in dysfunctional, when dysfunctional children become adults.
Right.
And they begin to read, because up until then, you think that your household, your family is the norm.
Right.
But you know other people don't have those issues.
Right.
And so the one sentence is, they begin to feel they're okay.
That's right. Okay? But here's where we tie into back to what Sarah started saying, is that unless we're willing to go outside of that parameter, unless we're willing to go outside of what we know, okay, we can't experience all the unknown. And so what you want to take from being the what, okay, instead of a who, is the what allows you to transcend anything that tells you you can't, that it is impossible, that you shouldn't, that it's wrong. And it allows you to have a relationship with something that is so far greater, far more intelligent, far more aware than you are. And in that experience, you become a more enlightened what? Okay?
Well, don't you also find in the one thing that when you were talking earlier about losing the connection to source, spirit, whatever you want to call it, okay? When you lose that through your interaction with other people in the human life, you lose that divine connection in order to seek the approval and the connection with the people around you. And so as you start learning that that is not the way it has to be, that you are okay no matter what anybody tells you, you are spinning it back to the divine connection.
Right, which is where you started. Okay?
Are you okay? You okay?
Yeah, it turned out, I did turn it off, I just couldn't remember to turn it off.
I hate that.
Okay? So speed, you're going to end up at that space, okay? Whether you're going away from it into the place we're talking about, okay, where you're going into it still believing that it's about finding that in human relationships and not in divinity, or whether you realize that and you're heading back, okay, you're either heading away from it to head back or you're heading back, okay, and that's the illusion. That's the illusion that there is somewhere else to go besides that there is something else better or bigger or more fulfilling than that. And the key is that when you look for that relationship with that what as that what, it takes all the pressure off the interface of being a who. You're not trying to define yourself as a who. You're already admitting that what you are is really undefined, unexplainable, beyond comprehension. How the fact that the existence itself is really beyond our ability to comprehend on a core level. How is it really happening? What is existence? And the reason people don't take time to have those contemplative thoughts about how are we even existing is because we don't know. We don't know. And if you can embrace that unknowing around existence, you can then let go of trying to understand how it's happening, and you can be more involved in it's happening. That it's never something we're going to know how it happens. We're here to be it happening, to experience it.
Awe-stricken.
Yeah, really, awestricken. So we we have time for the chamber. We
Woo!
yeah, we have
Yay.
time
It's been
for
a
the chamber.
while.
Yeah.
It's been a long time.
So it's 20 after, so let's get
Oh,
into our
good.
chamber. Beautiful, beautiful discussion, everyone. I mean, just awesome. Awesome interplay, great ideas being shared. You know, just great.
I'm not gonna fall.
That was a positive affirmation.
That is. Let's write it down in the book.
You are not gonna believe you can fly tonight.
Just as a quick announcement, Sarah is going to be here at the Wellness Center. She is going to be
Hi,
doing,
Sarah. Wave over here.
Yeah, she's going to be doing offering her services with nutritional counseling and dietary help and health coaching. And so yeah, so if you ever feel like you need some support with that type of work in your life or helping that part of your practice, she's here and we'll be getting her all rolled out and making her available to everybody. So I just wanted to put that out there for anybody who needs or knows someone who needs. You know, she'll be around. So just want to put that out there. Okay?
More info to come.
What's that?
More details to follow.
Yeah, we're going to be making announcements and newsletters and stuff, but just wanted to announce it because she's here and it's already happened. Okay. So, who wants to be in the center? Who wants to come into the chamber first? Who wants to be in it? Anybody? Yeah, I know you do. Come on in.
Yeah.
And I do have a little a baby from Florida to have in the chamber.
Oh.
Yeah. No, she's fine. We just, you know, it doesn't hurt.
It never hurts to love the baby, right?
Right.
So I think that it's really the wonderful intention for our chamber tonight should really just be about, let's look at what's stopping Kat from just being the what. Let's help her release what's the what. There we go. So Kat, the first thing is that when you embrace being the what, you're not going to know who you are. You're going to start to know what you are, but you're not going to know less and less who you are. And that makes who you are very easily a change, okay? It's almost like if I'm trying to move my left foot but all my weight's on it, it's going to be hard to move it. But if I put more weight on my right foot, I can lift my left foot up. And it becomes easy to move it around. So just kind of think of it that way, that you're just, right? Just taking the weight off the who foot, putting it on the what foot so that the who can still move around. You can still be a who on some level, like we all wear a costume, it's okay. We all have this little costume of flesh we wear around, even though it's the what manifesting. It's okay. We know that people are going to relate to you as a who. We're not out of touch that people are going to see us as who. We just need to know what we are behind that screen. There it is. So just say this with me, everyone. I'm done trying to control.
I'm done trying to control
My character.
my character.
Okay. Just hear that word, okay? Character. Why are we trying to control our character? We all have such character. We all are such characters. And we're such beautifully created characters in this wonderful play. But somehow we stopped being the true character we are. We tried to control our character to fit into a role, when really the role was perfectly made for us to be the character we are. And we all have such character when we allow ourselves to be that character. So what I'm clearing from everyone who's tapping in right now is just let yourself be the character you're meant to be. If you're meant to be a joker or have fun or a laugher, if you're meant to be a little more serious, or if you're meant to be whatever your character is, let it be written and let it perform. Every moment is a moment on stage. Not because you're looking for applause, but because you're here, you're illuminated. The camera of life is shining its light through the film of your being. And you're showing up on the screen. Let that light determine the character, the movement, the energy. Enjoy the experience as the story unfolds in front of you. There you go. Beautiful. A lot of wonderful shift on that. Yeah, just like that, see? Anybody. We'll do the little baby.
All right. Her name is Elia. She's Katie Rose's daughter. She just turned one.
She's just perfectly in balance. So this is a wonderful one because we get to just do preventative love on a child coming into the world. And if there was anything preventative to do for her, it would just be in her belly. Everyone just put your hand on your belly. Everyone can always use a little bit of love in their belly. Yeah. So I'm just going to speak a beautiful prayer of intention over everyone here. Let the inner environment always be healthy and nurturing. Let the outer environment never decide what we are. Let the inner environment nurture us, keep us strong. And let the loving environment that we come from and that we are, let it give us our immunity. Let our immunity not come from feeling safe around others. Let our immunity come from feeling safe, period. From feeling secure in what we are, and the undeniable order that allows us to exist. And the innocence and the peace that we were all created within. Let that be our immunity. Let that be, and knowing that would be, protects us, keeps us safe. And knowing that something far greater than we can ever imagine created what we are, and continues to create what we are. And let that give us immunity from worry. Let that give us immunity from fear. Let that give us immunity from low self-esteem. Let that knowing give us our immunity. Then immunity doesn't become a battle to rid ourselves of disease. Immunity becomes a state of being that is unable to be infected and affected in a disease way. Blessings to all of you. Thank you so much. So great to have all of you here. Look forward to seeing you next Tuesday.
Thank you.